trade, investment, innovation, and entrepreneurship. This business forum is a testament to our joint commitment to repositioning our relationship on a more sustainable and mutually beneficial commercial footing. Under my leadership, Ghana embarks on a new era of industrial diversification, youth employment, and green transformation. And the role of strategic investors and innovative partnerships will be indispensable in this journey. When this administration assumed office in early 2025, Ghana was emerging from a period of fiscal distress, high inflation, and declining investor confidence. We had to take urgent steps with the presentation of a budget to Parliament that made a steep adjustment in the primary balance from negative 3.9% of GDP to positive 1.5% of GDP by the end of this year. These bold and targeted interventions are beginning to witness the early signs of economic recovery and renewed momentum. In 2024, GDP growth stood at 5.7%, driven mainly by mining, construction, and service sectors. Trends in Bank of Ghana's high-frequency real sector indicators point to a sustained pickup in economic activity at the end of the first quarter of 2025. The updated Real Composite Index of Economic Activity, which is abbreviated CIEA, recorded an annual growth of 2.3% in March 2025 compared to a growth of 1.0% for the corresponding period of 2024. International trade activities credit to the private sector by banks and construction activities contributed to the improvement in economic activity during this period. Inflation, which peaked at 23.8% at the end of 2024, has begun to ease, falling to 21.2% in April 2025, largely due to moderation of both food and non-food inflation and prudent fiscal management. We're projecting to achieve single-digit inflation trajectory by middle of 2026. This will be underpinned by tighter monetary policy and complemented by fiscal consolidation and exchange rate stability.
So the president is attributing the strengthening of the cedi largely to the effect of reserves. Now, reserves surged from $8.9 billion in December 2024 to $10.6 billion April 2025. He attributes the strong reserve position of the country, that's dollar reserves, to the currency appreciation. Now, if the chart behind me tells a very interesting story, right? The currency has been essentially stable around 15 up until maybe the third week of April. And as we speak, the cedi has strengthened by almost 18.4% against the US dollar year to date. So that's very significant. So the dollar is falling against the cedi. This is what this chart shows. Now, take a careful look at this chart. If you compare this to the gold or the gold reserve chart, which I'm going to show you, there's a very interesting correlation there. So this is still a champion, right? Ghana's gold reserve holdings between May 2023 and April 2025, right? So you notice that the month-on-month change in gold reserves has been pretty high up until the end of 2024, all right? Now, what Theo Champon tells me is that we are now selling some of the gold to back the currency. So January, February, March, April, the month-on-month change in gold reserves has reduced. That suggests that the gold is now being put to work. Yeah. So the question is, should the person who began the reserve accumulation take the credit, or the person who's deploying the gold reserve to strengthen the currency take the credit? Right now? Because clearly, the reserve started building up during their time. But then the deployment of the reserve as a tool to support the currency, you can clearly tell, is in the new year. So this is what we've put out there as what we know. So I don't know what your comments are. So who's going to go on this reserve issue first?
Well, so first and foremost,
Yeah.
I want to go because there was one reason why the government could not deploy fully the reserve to back the currency. The IMF conditionality capped it at $80 million per month.
The IMF conditionality cap
Yes.
what?
Cap the reserve, how much we can exploit or you can, if you like, use our reserve to back the currency.
Gold reserve or currency reserve?
No, the gold, I mean the foreign reserves, because there was a cap on the amount of which you have, the conditionality was that we should have 3 months, at least 3 months of import cover. Now, if you are depleting...
That's different to gold reserves.
No, no, I'm coming. Because the gold reserve is part of the foreign reserves.
I'm not saying it's not. So
that's what I'm saying.
That's what is quantified.
No, I'm coming to the point. So I'm coming to the point that the gold reserve is part of the foreign reserves. Now, we are supposed to have 3 months of import cover as part of the conditionality.
Yeah.
Now, if you are building the reserve to meet that particular threshold, you cannot be seen depleting it. It got to a point that it was even reduced to 60, that we can only liquidate at least $60 million per month. Until after the review program, but their time, when they came for the last SL, they lifted that particular conditionality. And if you read the statement even put out by the minority today, by the Honorable Minister for Finance, this point has been clearly stated. So that was the reason. Now, let's come to whether or not who should take the credit.
So let me understand you. You started accumulating gold reserves.
Yes.
But the IMF program did not allow you to sell the reserve to gain the actual dollar to back the currency.
Exactly.
This is your point.
Exactly, because we needed to do at least 3 months of import cover with the reserve as well of our store of value with the central bank. That was the reason why we could not liquidate that. Now,
So was it your intention to use it to
of
support
course,
the
the
currency?
original idea of the Gold for Forest program was to use it to back. That said that when you are having some liquidity challenge, especially with the hard currency, the Bank of Ghana can auction. And that is what the Bank of Ghana did in April.
So let me get
much
this
as
So
much
you are
as-
doing both a gold for reserve program and a gold for oil program.
Yes. So the Gold for Oil program was actually to take out the shock of about 500 million per month of demand from the market due to the importation of crude products into the country. And that was essentially using the gold as a butter for the crude oil.
Did the two programs run concurrently?
The two programs ran concurrently.
So how do you use gold in exchange for oil that you import and at the same time build gold reserves?
So-
because you're saying the IMF didn't want
So-
you
so
to,
this-
to liquidate your reserve.
Yeah,
Yet the IMF will allow you to use your gold to buy oil.
So this was what was done. And fortunately, I happen to have served in one of the technical committees of the Gold for Oil program. The international oil companies came in. They took gold in lieu of the product they imported. So it wasn't that they would have to change it to dollar. They were taking the gold bars.
So it was barter trade.
Barter trade, kind of. Okay, it was a barter trade, kind of. Even though along the line, the IMF raised issues, which are different matter, probably we'll delve into another time.
So
Even
can
as
we say that
funding-
the gold for reserve program lasted longer than the gold for oil program?
So, rightly so, because the Gold for Oil program, even at a point, towards November, December, had virtually not been in operation. Okay. We had planned to increase the quantum of import or volume of import under the program, but the government couldn't do that because the IMF raised issue as the funding, because they had a view that you are actually putting in more, if you like, more CD into the currency, and they are looking at the viability of the funding of that particular program. So that was different. But let me even come to the point that you asked, because we've not answered the real question you asked, who should take the credit. It's like a father building wealth. And this wealth is bequeathed or is handed over by way of inheritance to the son. The son lives a good life. Do you say that by the fact that the son is now enjoying these particular riches that were bequeathed to him by the father, he should be taking credit? I'm sure that the one who built that particular wealth for the child to come and inherit should be the one taking the credit, even though for all. Admittedly, it's not that the child was a lazy child. I must concede. Okay, I must concede that the child was not a lazy. The child has also added some to the reserve, right? But what the child inherited is far more than 800 times of what he had accumulated. So clearly, I would think that in all sincerity, if you want to put where the credit is in terms of how we use the reserve to back the local currency and our ability to even auction as much, almost 600 million of or in the month of April into the market. And you know one thing, I even raised it, and the minority again raised it. We believe that the amount that is even being pumped into the market is far more than 2 billion. Why? Because the gold reserve reports that between this particular period, the gold board reports that 2.7 billion is what they have exported by way of gold. Now, if you go to read the Bank of Ghana report, the Bank of Ghana has only added about 500 to their reserves, gold reserves, and they have auctioned about 600. That means that we are not able to account for 1.7 billion, whether it is either off balance sheet that they use it to support the currency, or the Bank of Ghana has, the gold board has not repatriated that particular money into the shores of the country.
So, but you are agreeing that gold proceeds under gold board has gone up?
Yeah, so these are the factors why it has gone up.
No, but you need to agree first.
First, it has gone up.
So is that not a policy?
It's not a policy. I told you the external prices of gold from 30.
But the understanding of the gold board is that the gold board regulates the way the gold is traded. So when Mr. Jamie came here, his point was that they couldn't tell who was exporting our gold, and we're not getting the FX. So I'm just explaining what he said. Yeah. So on the basis of what the gold board does, that it streamlines that, and that's why, in their view, the proceeds from gold are higher.
It's not true. Let me tell you why it's not true. There was gold purchase program before the coming into office of the gold board. The gold board started operation in April, just 1 month. Now, there was a vehicle. That is the Precious Mineral Marketing Company started the gold purchase program way before the NDC came to office.
Were we retaining the proceeds?
Yes. Let me explain. Under the program, I was part of a meeting. Chambers of Mines came to the office. It was agreed that the large-scale mining companies should sell 20% of their mine product to the Precious Mineral Marketing Company, whilst all small-scale mining companies would sell. And that the government reserved the right to even buy every gold in line with the preemption right. Right? This was the agreement. But because the cedi was going to be used to fund the purchase of the gold anyway, the bank have this particular hesitation that you are going to be pumping more and you are going to cause the depreciation of the cedi, or inflation, sorry. You are going to increase the heat on the economy. So that was what was in operation. Admittedly, if the NDC government exports 1 million ton of gold, they are going to get more revenue than we got, even if we exported the same amount. Because the price has gone up.
No, but there was a period in Ghana where the amount of gold exported to Switzerland versus the amount that we said we had sold, the numbers were different. I
agree. And let me tell you why. The reason why we initiated this program was that we said that if we did it, it's going to stop smuggling. And the same argument, unfortunately, again, when the gold board bill came, working with the finance committee, we had the responsibility of looking at it. The same argument were advanced, right, to support the point that if we bring every gold mine into the umbrella of the gold board, it's not possible for anyone to export gold or to deal in the marketing and trading of gold without the licenses from the gold board. The only new thing that the gold board has done is to monopolize the process. That's the only new thing. That means that there is now one avenue through which you can sell gold. Hitherto, you had different, licensing regime where people could export gold. But even within the current region, there's still smuggling of gold.
All right. Let me let
because recently
I want you to comment on the question I asked about the chart, that the gold reserve accumulation happened from May 2023 till end of 2024. The net accumulation has reduced because there's obviously the gold being now used to support the currency in terms of the sale of gold. This is what this chart is saying. So what I'm saying is that, should we credit the NDC for deploying the gold to support the currency by reserve, or should we credit the MPP for the one to build the reserve?
I'm trying to answer this without you being tagged as political or trying to send a political message. Why am I doing this? Right, the accumulation of it, which Kabiru concedes to, that the IMF couldn't allow them to deplete a certain level of it. Right, that credit goes to the IMF because at the time they had depleted the reserves. with the IMF coming in, they put a watchman at the central bank. So the IMF brought in discipline to the central bank. And the discipline the IMF brought was by not allowing them. They had the appetite. They would have gone ahead to dissipate it, meaning the economy would still have gone very bad. But the IMF tightened it, not them. So that credit is not theirs. It's an IMF program, and that credit goes to the IMF. We come in, renegotiate, and we're in a position to deploy because we have given investor confidence. Right? They were having, as I said, erratic measures in terms of even the gold program. Right? But I don't know why we are even just fixated on gold alone when a basket of issues come together to build inflation or to build reserves, among other issues, or currency strengthening. It's more than that. Gold is just one of the minute aspects of it. But because we are having a confines with this, as far as gold is concerned, what I'm saying is that it's an IMF program you benefited from, the discipline of the IMF, not you. Because you had run the economy amok, sent everything negative, put us in a junk status. Our reserves were depleted. So the IMF, as part of the program and its measures, needed to grow back these reserves at a point to which they would free that. The confidence which we had, and we went to the table with them, they say, okay, well, you have a new government in place. They seem too confident. The president has injected confidence into the economy. The finance minister started by injecting confidence into the economy through his vetting. When he made commitments to domestic debt exchange program, you see, in this country, Bernard, at the time, blue chip investments, such as pensions, were touched. Right? That's how bad the economy was. Cocoa syndicated loans that nobody cracked a sweat in accessing. We went to the cocoa syndicated market, we couldn't syndicate. What does that tell you? Trade surpluses, and that plays a role as far as currency issues are concerned. So if we've stabilized all of this. We have heralded how stability could be through a prudent and tight budget, and a president who is calling for prudence among his appointees, expenditure issues among others. Right, that tells you the kind of confidence, and he knows what confidence can do or into an economy. Before we came in, what was happening? People were shying away, thanks to the DDEP. People were shying away from the banks. Have a conversation, anecdotally, with investors. That investor confidence is back here. And when they talk about spending, that we have not spent and what single policy, Bernard, the very day a government presents its budget to Parliament, investors starts making decisions based on that budget. So what kind of expenditure are we talking about? Planners start making. So as part of their planning, they factor all of this in. So when we say this has not happened, as though people are going to hold money for the next 12 months and not commit to a budget they've presented to the good people of Ghana and, for that matter, Parliament. So I think that argument is neither here nor there. But if you're talking about who should take credit, the IMF has a credit to take.
There's actually an interesting chart we have that shows that the currency is much stronger generally during IMF programs than non-IMF programs. If I have the time, I'll show it. It's something my friend from Blackstar did, which we would like to show. I'd like to take a short break. When I come back, I'll bring in Professor Buffett Bokbin to try and see if he has a view on this, where the currency strengthening is coming from. The president has said the reserve position has been responsible. Of course, prior to the NDC coming into office, the reserves had been built. Now, he's saying that they were not allowed to use the reserves or NDC government is saying that these guys were allowed to use their reserves because of the fiscal indiscipline that had been occasioned by their spending. And therefore, with the renegotiated or tweaked IMF program, if there's anything like that, they are able to deploy it. So we'll let the chips fall where they may. We'll come back and try and see if we can get some resolution on the key issues. But I think the more important question is, what must be done to also ensure that this does not remain a 9-day wonder? And I think that's the question most people are asking. And how strong will the currency be before things begin to even out? Stay with us.